Hi there. Welcome to a special presentation of Client Track. We're going to go through some very specific things in this particular video. We're going to start off by looking at some things in your business client section, and then we'll sort of filter over to a couple other things here as we go through. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is the general information screen that you're seeing here when you come into a client's file and how the information all works here. So one of the things you're going to want to do is be able to get to a client's file very quickly, which is a matter of clicking the Find Client button here on the left-hand side, which looks like a pair of binoculars. Now, when you do this, you're actually presented with two different search options that you can utilize. The first of which assumes you know the name of the client you're looking for. So as you try to type out the name, it will predictively try to figure out the rest of it for you. This way you don't have to type out the whole thing. But in the event that you don't necessarily know the name of the client you're looking for, you can search by any other piece of information you may have on their main file. For example, their business number, a phone number, one of the names of the contacts on this company. So if I were to use the business number at the top and type in 6165, you should see the results here of Sample Beauty Salon because that number actually matches with the business number. I can even actually go and search by a piece of the note here at the bottom. So if I type in when speaking and run that search, you'll see it actually finds the note that is on the client's file here. So it should be fairly easy to get to the information that you're looking for. Once you do get there, if you want to edit anything from the main information here, what you want to do is click the edit pencil in the blue area on the left-hand side, and that's going to give you a window that comes up which allows you to basically change anything like their main information or add or remove personnel to this company's detail. You can use the next tab in here to list any information that may be relevant to the titles of which you're seeing here. And if you do utilize these, you don't have to, but you can. They will appear on the client's file, much like the lawyer informational field there. If you have something that's maybe more specifically needed for your office that we don't necessarily have a default spot for, in the fourth tab labeled Other, there are actually five different kinds of fields you can utilize here that you can change so they match the way in which you would like to use them. Now, what I've done for my previous example is I have clicked on Define Custom Fields, and I have changed the first field name to be called bin number. And what I'm simply stating is that I have a filing cabinet system in my office, 5 physical cabinets with drawers A through Z, and in each drawer folders 1 through 50. So they contain specific hard copy details for my client's information. And instead of keeping this information in some sort of very long Excel spreadsheet or an outdated Rolodex system, this may be more efficient because now when I put this here on the client's file, while the bin number field name will be available to all business clients, the information I put in the white space is strictly just for this client, which will then show up right away on their screen. So if you use the find function I showed you earlier, you get to the screen very quickly and you know immediately what you're looking for. And that's just one example of, I'm sure, many different ways in which you can utilize those custom fields. So get in there and take advantage of them, of course. Now, one more thing I want to point out to you here before we take a look at scheduling some deadlines is you'll notice there is a note field, which does show up right away on the client's file. And while there is no limit to the amount of information you can actually place in here, I would utilize this for things that you should always be aware of every time you look at this particular client's file. So, for example, I have a note here that says, when you're speaking to the owner of this location, try to refrain from mentioning this particular detail because they get a little upset about it. So there could be maybe a specific order of things that you should follow when you're doing work for the client, or it could be something other that's very important that you should see right away. This is the information we suggest to put here, is to put in details that you should always be aware of the moment you look at the main screen for the client. Now, there are, of course, other note-taking locations in the software. There is a much less important note location in the top right-hand corner called the scratch pad. And this one, too, has no limit to what you can place in here. But the difference being is that you only actually see what's in the scratch pad. You remember to open it up. So I would put very minuscule, not very important information in there. Now, in terms of logging agreements or phone calls or any other pieces of information like that, there actually is another section we're going to talk about a little bit later, which is better for putting in those pieces of information. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. But now we want to take a look at scheduling some actual deadlines for your clients. Now, when you begin scheduling deadlines for your clients, that's what you're going to basically be using all these other tabs here at the top of the program. And depending on where you say you are in Canada, depends on what those tabs will be labeled in some cases. Sometimes it'll say GST. It won't show PST if you don't need it in your area. Sometimes it'll say HST depending on which province you say you're in. So the names obviously will adjust accordingly to that as well. When you do begin scheduling your deadlines, though, you will find that there is nothing in here scheduled because we don't necessarily know what your client deadlines are. However, it's just a matter of going to each of these tabs here, and all of them will have predetermined options on the left-hand side, with exception to bookkeeping and custom, and we'll look at that in a few minutes. But you basically want to click an option here on the left, and it will schedule the entire season's worth of deadlines for you for the year you're currently in. Now, the program's main focus when you're scheduling your deadlines is the actual due date itself. So if you tell the program you have to do something 12 times a year, it's going to make sure that you know you have to do that thing 12 times a year. Now, there is a period end column in here which tries to figure out generally what the period should be from, but that's not really the main focus here. What the big focus is the due date itself, and that's something you're going to want to make sure that you are getting in here and they are set for the right deadlines. Now, in some cases, you may find that certain clients have minor discrepancies from whatever the standard may be. So at any point, you can also click a deadline and change it to what it should be, and the program will remember that change going forward as a permanent suggestion or a change for this client. So as I said, on the left-hand side, there are predetermined options for the majority of your tabs here, and it's just a matter of going in here and clicking, this is the item we need, and it adds it to your system. Now, by default, nothing is actually assigned to any of your users, but you can go on a per-client basis and either click in the field here where it has the client's or the user's name and select which user this is for one at a time. Or before you actually begin scheduling your deadlines, you can do this on a per-client setting. So if you have the same users that take care of the same things for the same clients every year, you can actually go to the right-hand side of the program from the main screen and click on Client Options. And then within here, go to the Assign Employees tab, and you can say from now on, whenever these kinds of services get scheduled to this client, this is the person who's going to be taking care of them so that it goes to the right person's task calendar, and that way when they do searches for the work they have to do, they're going to see it as part of their list of items on the report. Once you get a handle on that, then you may want to go back in and then begin scheduling your deadlines so they'll automatically be applied to the correct users. Now, there is one thing I do want to point out for you that is a little bit tricky unless it is explained, and it's how the year-end and corporate tax tabs very much come together. So the year-end tab, what a lot of people try to do is they try to schedule what the year-end date here is in the top left, and then they try to put multiple deadlines in this tab, which is actually not necessarily how it's supposed to work. What you want to do instead is you want to go to the top left dropdown, and you want to tell the program what the month and day of month is for this client's year-end. The year in this case doesn't matter, because it's going to schedule it for the year that we're currently in. With that in mind, you may actually want to schedule whatever the most recent year end is that you did for the client or are still working on, because the program will actually reschedule everything for all of your appropriate dates for the next year automatically when you move to 2016. So in the event that the client's year end is December 31st, you actually want to set this as 2014, and then the 2 dates that follow it are scheduled in corporate tax right beside this. But you'll see if we go ahead and create the task now, it's going to put it in for 2015. And if that's not what you want, because it says 2015 in the top right, that's your working year, what you want to do is actually make a temporary change to your working year. So I would go to the top right and click the little pencil beside where it says 2015, and I'm going to make a temporary switch to the 2014 year, and I'm going to go OK. Now when I click to create the year-end task, this time it's going to put it in for 2014 of the same date that I've selected. Once you've got that in there, then to schedule the 2 dates that follow this, and you want to stay in the same year you've moved to do this, you want to go to corporate tax right beside this and click the top 2 checkboxes on the left-hand side, which will come in by default as the 3 and 6 month dates that precede the year end you just placed on the client's file. And if for whatever reason the client is a 2-month, not 3-month, you can click and change the date to what it should be. The program will remember that change for this client going forward. Now, if the year ends that you're scheduling are for the year that we're in, then obviously you don't have to worry about changing to 2015. You just have to simply say what the client's year end actually is here in the top left. So let's say it's August 31st. Go ahead and schedule it, puts it in there, and then once again go to your corporate tax and schedule those 2 dates so that they can come in correctly. Now, as you finish your tasks over time, there is a close button which allows you to say, I have finished this task as of this season. So closing it just simply tells the program, This item has been finished as of this year, so you don't have to worry about it again until next year. But any items that are closed are always going to be searchable as previous history in your system as well. So they're not deleted, they're just out of your way. Now, concerning the bookkeeping and custom tabs, as I mentioned, they're a little different because they don't necessarily have predetermined options here on the left. Now, I'm just going to quickly clear out what's in here so we can show you this. So, obviously, I've got a couple of items that I have created here on the left. And when you first begin using ClientTrack, there actually won't be any items for you to be able to schedule because bookkeeping is very different from one office to another. So, we want you to be able to create the services that are specifically for your location. So what you're going to do in here is you're going to start by creating some templates by clicking the big green button above the list here on the left-hand side. This is going to give you your creator. So then you can now begin telling the program what kind of service do you want to create as a template so you can then give this to whichever clients need it. So if the thing that you're doing is monthly bookkeeping or quarterly invoicing or annual renewal, you're going to obviously give your task name something that applies to the work you're doing. Once you've had a chance to name it, if you want the items to be numbered, let's say it's monthly and you want them numbered 1 through 12, click the checkbox just below where the name appears, and then that will number them in order. Then below this, you have the ability to say how often this occurs. And as you select different settings down here, you'll notice that there are different date options to make sure you're setting up the right thing. So in the example, let's try monthly bookkeeping. So when we change it, we have some different options here. We're going to leave it at once every month because it needs to appear 12 times a year. You're going to tell it at which month in the year itself does it actually begin. So where is the first deadline month? And then you're going to tell it of each of these months, what day should it be finished by. Now, if you choose the 31st, it will use the last day of whatever each month happens to actually be. You don't have to necessarily worry about the repeat by field. It's just there as additional information, but it doesn't really necessarily have any specific meaning. One thing I do suggest is right now we are creating a template, so I would also suggest that you do not assign the template to a user unless you want it to go to the same user no matter which client you give it to by default. The estimated time just below this tells the program whenever tasks get scheduled in your system, they're placed on a task calendar. And when we put them on the calendar, how much time of that day should we block aside for you to be able to get this done? The defaults are always coming in as an hour. You can change that to anything you want except for 00. It needs to have at least a minute. Now the last little checkbox just below that, it's going to be filled in by default, and this tells the program, yes, this is something that automatically does reoccur and gets rescheduled every year for my client. So if this is something you're creating that only happens every once in a while, not consistently every year, you can remove the checkbox, so it means you have to remember to manually reschedule it every time the client needs it for that particular season. Now we're going to click the green button here to say add tasks, and it's going to populate the list on the right hand side. And what you want to focus on is make sure that all of your names and your due dates are exactly what you want them to be. And then finally you want to give this service a name to save it by. I suggest you save it as the same name as the task itself, just to avoid any confusion, but it isn't necessary that you do this. When you click save, it'll confirm that that's been done for you. And then you just click OK on your confirmation. And you can then cancel out of the creator here in the lower left. And the service you created will now be on the list. So it's not yet scheduled to any of your clients, but you can now go to any client that needs this, highlight the service here from the list on the left, and choose to assign selected service to this client. For bookkeeping and custom tasks, when you assign something, it's going to give you one extra option. Do you want to keep the default settings? Or do you want to change something last minute, like maybe now assigning it to a particular user and then finally going OK? Aside from that, it will basically work now like every other tab in your system. The only real difference between bookkeeping and custom to the other tabs is if you've scheduled something by accident in here, unlike the other tabs where there's just a quick no payments option here on the left, for bookkeeping and custom, if you want to get rid of these items in case you made a mistake, you'll need to go to the Manage Tasks button in the bottom green area here. And that's going to give you a window of these particular tasks. You can highlight the ones you no longer require and then hit Delete Selected here in the bottom right. And that's going to get rid of those items for you. Now, in the event of the Custom tab, it works very much the same way as the bookkeeping section. So in the top left, we have a single task creator, which is kind of like a one-time thing that may never happen again. And then we have the recurring option in the top left, just below that, which is the same creator you saw in the bookkeeping section. it works exactly the same way. The only real difference you're going to find here is that this obviously allows you to create any other kind of service we didn't have a default spot for, but also whatever you create in here, you can make it a part of any other currently existing tab in your software. Now, as an example of how that may become relevant to you, if we look in any of the tabs here in the program, you will not find anything by default for any T3 items. But maybe that's something you want to have scheduled in here, but you want to have it put under the payroll source alongside the T4 and 5 items. So in order for you to do that, you're going to create your service in the custom section. Usually this is annual. And you're going to tell it to be a part of the payroll remit section, which is actually payroll source. So then you're going to give it its proper title of T3 slip and its due date, which I believe is generally around April 30th. And then finally, you're going to add the task and give it a name to save it by. And again, I would name it the same thing as the task itself. And then you go save. When you do save this, it's going to appear as part of your custom items. Now, when you actually schedule it, however, by clicking assign, it's going to be placed under the tab that you've chosen, and it'll actually confirm this for you. And if we look at payroll source now, we're going to see that the T3 slip is actually a part of this section. It's now considered part of this section as well. So this means that if I go to the task list and I run a report to say, show me all the payroll items that are due, the T3s will come up alongside the T4s and 5s as part of that same result. So basically, your custom section allows you to not just create anything we didn't have in the program, but make it a part of any other currently existing tab, and just gives you a lot more freedom and flexibility to get your deadlines in there and put them in the proper spaces. So that's all it takes to get your deadlines in there. It's not really a complicated system. It's not meant to take you a lot of time, but it's meant to obviously get all the deadlines in there that you do need to take care of on a consistent basis for your clients. Now, once you've gone to each of your clients' files and actually have scheduled your deadlines, then what you're going to notice is that all of your tasks are going to appear as searchable from your tasks section in the program. Now, we can access the task section by either clicking View Tasks here in the blue area, or below the blue area, you'll see there's gray title bars which have different task titles or section titles. So if we just click Tasks from down here in the lower left, they both bring you to the same spot, which by default is the task list. One thing you're going to find is that everybody has their own task calendar, which allows you to organize when you should be able to actually take care of your work. And when you do change things on your calendar, you're actually changing something called the calendar date. So you can actually just click a day, open it up, and drag work from one day to another to sort out your schedule. This way, you're not going to be overburdened by too much in one day. So then when you look at your task calendar, the default setting is not quite what you're seeing here. I'm just going to quickly show you what it does have as a default setting. Now, the defaults are very simple. So it's going to show you everything for the month you're currently in for all users, all clients, all task types. And it shows you very specific details like who is it for, what is it you're doing, when is it due, and who's responsible for it, as well as whether or not it's been closed. The default search will also show you just unclosed items. Now, you may want to go and specify particular things and narrow this down, and you can do that by clicking the magnifying glass in the top left labeled Advanced Search, which allows you to then specify what it is you're looking for. So first you would activate the checkbox of the type you want to search for, and then you choose from the drop-down what it is you want to see and tell it to run your search here by clicking Perform in the bottom right. And then you're going to get a much more specific result as to what it is you want to see. But what I prefer you want to do as well is you want to go to the View Hide columns here in the upper left. Now, this is a setting that is done individually per your users. And this allows you to change which columns are visible or not. One of the things I suggest you do is take out priority rank and client ID. A lot of people tend not to use this field or these fields, so they're just taking up extra space for no apparent reason. But if you change nothing else, at least if you have already been moving things around on your task calendar, you're definitely going to want to have the calendar date showing in here so that you can see where it appears on your calendar, and that's going to show right beside the actual due date itself. So you're always aware of not only where it is scheduled for you to work on, but the amount of days you have left to get it done, which we find is very important. Now also in your column adjustments, there is the ability to add in a set of check boxes here on the right hand side, and you can add up to 25 of these if you wish. Most people don't really take advantage of the 25 of them, but let's say that we add in 5 steps. So these are global check boxes. They apply to all of the clients, all of the task types that we're doing for all work that we're doing. So you're going to use this as basically a generic workflow system that applies to everything you're doing. So if we put these items in here, then let's say that no matter what it is we're working on, we always have 5 things we must confirm that we've said we have to do before we can ever say we've closed an item to say it's finished. So by default, they're going to be labeled steps 1 through 5, but you can rename them by going to the right-hand side of any task and clicking any of these view info buttons. It honestly doesn't matter which one you select. And in the bottom right of the following window, there's a button here labeled define status info, which allows you to then make changes to the names of the items that you're working on. Once you've got a chance to change those names, you can then start filling out these checkboxes to say what you have more or less done as an overall status to your work. And what's nice about these columns here in the program is you can click any column name to sort, once for ascending order, twice for descending, and a third will clear your sort. And then specifically to these checkboxes, after one has been filled out, if you then click beside that checkbox in the same column, it's actually going to show you who filled it out and on what day. And then further to these checkboxes, in our search, not only can you search by who it's for or who it's assigned to or where it is in your system in terms of due date or where it appears in your calendar and any date ranges you want to look for, but you can also search by those statuses as to whether or not they have or have not been filled out. So you can get a very specific report. And the total of your result will actually be appearing above the list here on the top left, which in this case says 5. Now, what's important about this is, let's say you run a search to show you what's due in the next 2 weeks, and you tell it to show you only the items that do not have the first checkbox completed. This is a very quick listing to show you that, okay, maybe you're going to notice you have 5 or 6 things that are all due in one day and nothing has been started on these items. These now become your priority items in your system so that you know you're going to want to put some focus on these and get them out of the way. Also, one thing you might want to sort of take advantage of every once in a while is at the top of every list in the program, every list where you can do a report like this, there is an export to Excel option, which takes exactly what you're seeing here and places it into an Excel file in case you need to do any further calculations or things like that. Okay, so that's going to be basically the major function of your program is you're going to go to your business clients, you're going to put your deadlines in, and then you're going to use the task list to make sure that you can run reports. One last thing I wanted to point out for you here is when you do create a search, you can actually save it as a constant search. So what you want to do first is you actually want to fill out what it is you want to search for. So let's say you want to see everything that's assigned to yourself as a user on a consistent basis for the date range of a 2-month period. And that will be, you can actually say that it's relevant to just the start of the month that you're in, or you can keep it as a static date, which doesn't change. So it's up to you when you select this. But after you've chosen your settings here, you want to then type in the name that you want to save this by at the bottom. And then click the Save Search button. And it's going to ask you, do you want this to be the same date or the same settings all the time? Or do you want it to move forward with you as a monthly date that constantly goes forward to the next month when you begin it? So you can make your choice and then click OK. And what will happen then is you're going to see the Save Searches will appear in the list here just above the Refresh button in the top left-hand corner of the list. And you can then just choose your search item, and it's going to then show you those results in your list here. Okay, so that's a lot of information, obviously, to take in concerning your business clients and your tasks. We're going to look at something that can help you, actually, with any sort of year-end projects that you may be working on or bigger things that you might do for your clients every once in a while. And that's on the lower left-hand portion of the program here on the left. We're going to open up the projects title here. And this section allows you to then create any projects that you might have for your clients. And a project is more of a thing where it may not necessarily happen every year for your client. Maybe it's only going to happen this one year, this one time. But it needs to start in this date. It needs to end by this date. This is the person who's going to oversee everything, and we have a bunch of steps that need to be finished on these particular dates along the way so we can keep track of these items. And then you can actually track them together as a project as a whole, so when you see the actual project, you're going to be able to see the steps and what's been completed together. What you want to do to begin scheduling a project, or to create one at least, is to go to the Manage button here on the left-hand side. This is going to open up the project creation window. And then in here, what you can do is you can say to create a new project template by clicking the green button above the list. When you do this, it's going to give you another window which allows you to actually create the steps of your project and what's going on for each of those steps. You'll want to start by obviously giving your project a name which applies to the work you'll be doing. And then you're then going to click the Add New Step button here on the left, and just click that for as many steps as it takes. Now, you can put as many steps as you want. We suggest you try to keep it to a maximum of 25 steps, just to keep things a little cleaner in your system, but you can put as many as you'd like. For every single step that you add into your system here, they have their own settings here on the right. So things like you can give them their own names, their singular descriptions, the person who's going to be responsible for taking care of this step. You can go to the Dates tab and you can select either dates relative to the start of the project, which is generally better, or fixed target dates. The reason why fixed target dates don't necessarily always work is because if you save this as a template and then assign it to a client 4 months down the road, the fixed target dates are still going to be from the outstanding prior dates. Whereas if you use relative, it will just always move forward with you. You can allow for a certain amount of time for each of these steps. So basically when they appear on your task calendar, because they will appear in your task section, how much time of your day should it block aside. You can also have it applied to the time budget control. And when you actually apply a project to a client, you can actually give it a certain number of hours for the total project budget. And this will then, you can say to use a specific percentage of that total project, or you can just use fixed target times. It's very much up to you what you'd like to do. Now, you can also use a spending budget, and again, you can set a whole project spending total, and you can then limit the spending for each of these steps based on that total, or you can use fixed target spending values as well. Where that would basically apply to is it'll take effect if you're actually using the timers when you're recording time in your steps, and you can actually say, based on the billing information of this step, what it should be charging for the amount of hours you're spending, or if there's just a flat rate you're going to charge for it, any sort of default step names here for it, and any sort of default descriptions in case you want to do this. So once you get a chance to set these all up for each of your different steps, you can then click OK to save your project. Now, really the most important three things, though, of course, are what is it, what are you doing, and who's responsible for it? When should it be finished by, and how much time are you allowed? Those are really the most important things you're going to want to worry about for your steps in your project. Now, after you've had a chance to set them all up, you click OK, and it saves your project, and you're good to go at this point. So then you're going to see that it's going to appear in this list now as part of your saved templates. And finally then, what we do is we click the client or clients we want to give this to and go Apply Project to Selected Clients using the green button in the bottom right. So at this point, it will then ask you to specify a project leader, the starting and the ending dates, how much time you're allowed, and if you're going to give it a budget. Now, you don't have to select the time budget or the cost budget. It is very much optional. But then when you click OK, it's then going to apply this project to the client or clients you've selected. It will ask you that last little confirmation screen individually for each of your clients. So if you told it to schedule it for 5 of them, the project leader window and start and end date will come up 5 different times to allow you to specify this. Now, once you've got this in here, you can then run various different searches based on the types of projects that you have in your system by going to the magnifying glass in the top left. So basically, all searching works the same in the different portions of the program. You use a magnifying glass, you come in, and you specify what it is that you want to see. So again, you just click the checkbox, confirm which client you're looking for, and then if you want to look by a particular project status, you can do that as well. And then you run your search to go perform search. If you are looking by project leader, you can also do so from the middle tab here to search by project leader. And then when you run your report, if you're searching for a specific project type, or you can do this very quickly by breaking it down here in the top right-hand drop-down, it's going to show you then the steps of the project and what's been completed so far. Now, what's nice about these is that you can see them as a whole grouped together, so you can very quickly have a judgment as to what's being done so far. And then you have your project statuses here on the left, which allow you to say whether or not you are sort of overall on hold for any reason, or if things are in progress, and basically how things are going for your project as a total. Also, with these checkboxes, again, if you click beside them in the same column, they will show you the more detail about these. And as I mentioned before, the steps of your projects are actually searchable in your task list because they will be a part of your task. section in your calendars. So if you then were to run a report and say, show me everything that's due, you'll actually see that the same title here for my projects are appearing, and they are not scheduled to many of my users, but one of them is. And if I were to say, just show me everything that's assigned to myself as a user here, I'm actually going to see that that project is specifically assigned to me. So let's say we give me all dates here. Now if we sort by name, we see that I actually have 3 different clients that I've been given step 1 here for to take care of on that same project. So hopefully this will allow you to take all these different items and bring them together to track them as one overall project whole. Now, the final thing we're going to talk about for today's little video here is we're going to look at something called the More Info tab, which is totally accessible from anywhere in the program and works the same way for both business and personal clients. And if you recall earlier, I mentioned that there's a spot where you can enter things like agreements you made with clients or phone calls, or maybe you want to copy the text of an important email and paste it into here as historical evidence for your clients as you deal with them over time. That's the next section we're talking about. Now, as I said, it is accessible from anywhere in the program, but to access it in either business or personal clients, you go to the tab here labeled More Info, and you'll see there's actually 2 different sections listed within here, and there is a green button for the upper and lower half. Now, the 2 different sections that are in here are designed for slightly different kinds of information, but they do work very much the same way. So how these are going to work for you is if we click the top green button, this is strictly designed to add things into the system like missing information you need to locate or questions which may require an answer. And then you can fill out the quick subject, which gives the person a very quick idea as to what this might pertain to. And you can then apply it to either yourself or any other users in the office so that the program will make sure they're aware of these items. And then you want to put in your details about what this is. Now, same thing is available with the lower section. So if we click the lower of the 2 green buttons, this is more meant for every other kind of communication you may receive with your clients over time. So things like phone calls or text messages or agreements or walk-ins, and you want to log this in. Now, let's say I have a phone call, and we're going to try out a full example of passing this back and forth now. So if I have a phone call for the client, but let's say I'm not the person who needs to follow up the call. So maybe the call came in from the client and they were asking for one of my other users in the office, but that person was out or they were on the phone already. So instead of having to walk over their desk and leave them a note, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give them a quick item here, and we're going to call it phone call today. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to assign this to the person that it was for. And then if I want, I can click the date stamp to record the exact time in which I'm entering these details. And then we're just going to simply tell them what the details are about here. Now, as the person leaving this item on the file, whether it's a missing info or a communication, this is pretty much all I'm responsible for doing. So I'm going to click OK, and it's going to save it to the client's file. Now, I did assign it to Anne. So if Anne is currently logged into the system, the moment I give this to her, in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, just above where your time appears in Windows, she'll actually get a pop-up immediately to let her know that this item has been given to her. But let's say Anne wasn't available at the time that I gave this to her because she was out of the office. So maybe she had the program closed for whatever reason. So there is another way in which you'll be told about these items. And that's something you can open up manually anytime you want. And what we do is on the right-hand side of each of these sections, you'll see there's a button here called Advanced Missing Info Form for the upper section and Advanced Communication Form for the lower section. These items are designed to pop up when you log into the program and instantly show you all items that have been assigned to you as a user from here that have not yet been resolved. And the same information opens up when you pull them up manually as well. So this way, you don't have to worry about trying to go and search for these things. Now, speaking of searching though, for the communication window, if we run a search by clicking the magnifying glass and tell it to show us Anne's information, Anne's going to see the items we've given to her. So this is what it would look like on her screen, and here's the phone call I've left her. Now let's say in the background there she's not on the right client's file. So let's say she's looking at the lawyer's office and she wants to go directly to the beauty salon. In the actual column here where it has the client's name, if she just clicks the beauty salon, you'll actually see in the background it'll switch to the correct client information. And then she can scroll over to the right here and click View Info, pull up the actual details of the item I've given to her, and then let's say now she gets on the phone with the client and she has the information. So she'll move my stuff down, put in her own date stamp, and it would say her name at this point if she was logged in as herself. And then she'll put in her updates here. Now, if this phone call is dealt with, nobody else needs to know about it, then Anne can simply just go and click resolve to finalize this item. And finalizing an item doesn't delete it from the system. It just means it's taken care of, but it's now there as permanent historical evidence. But let's say Anne wants to give it back to me. So she's going to let the system know she's completed the call as of this day. But she's going to leave the resolve checkbox blank and then reassign it back to Adam now as the intended person. When she does this, it's now not part of her list anymore, but Adam gets the pop-up right away to let him know there's been some updates. And he now sees it as part of his items, so he can then go into the system, figure out what's going on, and if he's fine with everything that's happened now, he can just resolve it to say it's finished. Now, if you want to add these items from anywhere in the program, you'll see here in the bottom right of my screen there's a big blue circle with a question mark in it, and to the right of that a fairly large phone icon. So the big blue circle is the same as the green button for the upper half of the More Info tab. The phone icon is the same as the lower half green button. The only difference is if I click the ones in the bottom right, because it's not right on the client's file, because you can do it from anywhere, you have to tell it which client it's for. That's the only real difference. And then if you want to pull up the advanced forms from anywhere in the program, again in the bottom right, the little icons with the notepads on them, the blue circle is the advanced for the upper half, the phone icon with the notepad is the lower half. So you don't have to go to the client's file or the More Info tab at all just to see the details here. Now, one final example I want to leave you with for this video for today is the ability to search your items here. So for this example, what I want to do is I want to talk about making an agreement with a client. Now, let's say you've made an agreement with a client as a 4% discount on their next upcoming invoice because of some small discrepancy. So they agree to that, you place it on their file, and then you let them go. And let's say now 4 or 5 months go by, and the client tries to dispute you, saying that the details of the agreement were an 8% discount. And you would be thinking very quickly that, no, this would actually not be the agreement we made. But instead of spending any time trying to find this in a stack of paperwork or arguing with your client, you can now just call up a search. So you can tell the client, well, hold on, let me look at your file. So we click the magnifying glass in the communications. I'm going to take out who it's intended for because that's a default search by your name as you're logged in. I don't care who the agreement is intended for in my office at this point, but I do care about searching for the client in question. I probably care about searching for the type agreement in this case. And then I'm actually going to remove the resolve status because I want to search by both so that I'm making sure I'm not missing anything. And if you actually know the date range in which you made the agreement, you can even call up the start to the end of the week. But if you don't know the date, then just don't select anything, remove the checkbox there, and just search by everything and tell it, give me that report. Then we can full screen this and instantly turn around and tell the client, here's the details that we made for the agreement. If they still need further proof from you, then as I mentioned before, every list view can be exported to Excel. So then you can lock that Excel file, give that to your client through an email, and they can see the information right from your system in their hands without being able to tamper with that file. So not only is it good as historical evidence, but it can be used in a more defensive manner towards scenarios like that. Now, of course, we here at ClientTrack hope that you do not have scenarios like that. But of course, we do understand that things like that may come up, and that's something that may help you with that in your future endeavors. So we'd like to say thanks very much for taking the time to have a look at this video, of course. We really appreciate that anybody takes the time to learn the program better and to look at these things and just to get a good feel for what's going on in the program. So, of course, if there's any other questions, you can certainly direct them to the tech support at clienttrack.ca and just let us know what you're trying to do, and we'll do our best to help you out. But thanks again for watching this video, and we certainly hope that you have yourselves a wonderful day.